The lore of Warhammer 40K is full of some really creepy things, and today we're going to go over some of the creepiest units for each faction, starting off with the Dark Eldar.
No species is as terrifying as the Dark Eldar. These twisted and insane Xenos are the epitome of perversion and doom. They literally must cause as much pain and suffering as they can in order to keep themselves alive. Every single Drukhari encountered has ended in torment and death. The few survivors tell tales of sadistic abominations that drive hardened warriors insane. One of these blood-chilling creatures is known as a Talos Pain Engine. Created by the insane Dark Eldar Masters of Pain known as the Homunculi, the Talos Pain Engines are the Drukhari constructs used as living weapons of war. Pain engines were first created as grotesque torture devices. They combined the precision of a machine with the psychological terror of an enslaved organic being. This means that the Talos is just as much in agony as its victim, being incentivized to cause as much torture as possible in order to relieve its own frustration. The pain engines became so popular at causing mayhem that the homunculi employed them as weapons of war across the galaxy's innumerable battlefields. These semi-sentient machines are invaluable to the homunculi, as they serve as both guardians of mobile torture chambers, inflicting punishment upon all those who displease their master. The fate of those caught within the death grip of a Talos does not end with death. The remnants of the victims caught within its grasp are siphoned out to be used in the creation of potions and elixirs. And in battle, this gruesome process is immensely pleasing to the homunculus owner, for not only does it provide an entertaining spectacle, but it also affords the Talos even greater motive power as it harnesses and consumes its fleshy bounty. Clacking and twitching as if reveling in the kill, the Talos advances with renewed vigor, its highly technological weaponry spitting indiscriminate death into the ranks of the foe. And when it catches its next quarry, the process begins anew. But the fate of one caught by the Talos does not end in death. Upon the engine's return to its coven, the living parts of its victim will be siphoned out from within the metal shell and used to create yet more potions and elixirs. When homunculi send their Talos engines to accompany a Dark Eldar raid, the monstrous servants are often tasked with collecting specific samples for their masters. Typically, this involves devouring certain types of creatures from the planet's populace, or subsuming a specific individual, such as a planetary governor. However, at times the demands for homunculi are very nuanced. For example, when raiding Tau space, the Talos known as Marrowgiver was once instructed to consume only fire warriors who had witnessed the rest of their strike team slaughtered before them. Failure to complete such a task, or worse still, deviating from the instructions, inevitably would see the Talos dismantled and discarded. To outside eyes, such stringency may seem wasteful, but in their craft, the homunculi require absolute precision. Different types of harvested material carry different properties, each of which has unique purposes. Musculature and nervous tissue are combined in ways unimaginable by nature, and the emotions absorbed in flesh at the time of the creature's death are extracted, enhanced, and then fashioned into weapons. To pollute such work with impurity, such as meat from the wrong species or blood permeated with the wrong emotion, would be to spoil the homunculus's work, which they may have slaved over for solar decades, and then would deny a new morbid creature to the entire galaxy. The homunculi also often wish to reconstitute the soupy remains of the Talos victim and instill them with life, so they can be questioned once again. More than one general has died only to end up in the torture chambers beneath the Dark City, bleeding secrets to the homunculi in a vain attempt to end his torment. A Talo possesses a metal shell and twisted mind, making it all but impervious to harm. But the value to a homunculi is not just as a shield, it also acts as a tool, for it allows its master to punish the slow and weak without lifting a crooked finger. The forelimbs of a Talos can also be mounted with a variety of crude implements, such as a macro scalpel that can scissor even an Ogren's body into bloody chunks, a chain flail that can rip flesh and metal with equal ease, and an ichor-spewing funnel that siphons fluid from the Talos' thorax to reduce lightly armored victims to primordial ooze. Additionally, this creature can carry ranged weaponry, such as a liquefier gun at the end of their scorpion-like tail, but it is its manipulators and scalp-keen claws that hang underneath the Talos' segmented carapace that are truly to be feared. When a Talos catches an enemy warrior, it holds them tight with a pair of grasping steel limbs and begins a rapid and efficient disassembly of its victim with the rest. Motors hum and drills whine as it works its way with surgical sharp implements, drawing each constituted part into itself, stripping and rendering down the physical form of its prey layer by layer until nothing is left but a few drops of blood. Because of the popularity of the pain engine, the Talos design has been altered and modified by the inventive homunculi all throughout Kamara, and many variants are known to exist, each one seeking to rival the amount of torture and pain that can be created. The homunculi covens, such as the Prophets of Flesh and the Ever Spiral, have made the most distinct war engines. One of these examples is known as a chain ghoul. It drags hooked chains across the battlefield, snatching up victims and then flying high enough to make it impossible for them to escape. It is a terrible sight to behold, as the victims squirm like fish out of water, attempting to remove the hook from their bodies at no avail. The chain ghoul patiently dismembers its catch, while the others look on in horror at what will happen to them. One by one, they are consumed, and when the cumbersome engine is done, it sweeps down to catch more of its prey. Each variant is designed for a specific form of torture that best fits the requirements of their homunculi. There is truly no other Dark Eldar abomination more terrifying than these pain engines.
Now let's move on to the creepiness of chaos.
Within Nurgle's Plague Legion, there is a caste of demons so effectively terrifying that their appearance on the battlefield almost always results in broken morale. They are the aerial cavalry of the plague god known as the plague drones. And to fully wrap your mind around how shockingly hideous these creatures are, let's realize that in Nurgle's collection of demons, these stomach-churning monsters stand out from the rest of the grotesque abominations because they truly are the pinnacle of disgust. A plague drone is a massive decaying rotfly being ridden into battle by a cackling plague bearer. Unlike most demonic creatures that pour out of the immaterium, the plague drones are actually two demons working together to complete the task assigned to them by their masters. Sitting atop a bloated and disgusting rotfly is a high-ranking plague bearer. Separately, these demons are dangerous, but together they become the vanguard to any Nurgle force. The large, buzzing sound of the rotfly's massive wings as it flies towards the enemy's front line sends dread across the foe's ranks, until the airborne demon makes impact like a hard-stung wrecking ball, bowling warriors over with the sheer stinging bulk. Once stuck in, the fly's hairy limbs scramble in melee, ripping through flesh and cracking bone. Their needle-sharp noses pierce the armor joints and eye lenses of the enemy to inject disease acid into their victim's body. Revolting mouth parts gape and suck as they envelop the head of screaming warriors, slurping them down like sweet meats. Meanwhile, the demonic rider hacks at the victims with their plague sword and hurls infernal death heads into the foe's ranks to engulf them in billowing clouds of plague spores and sickness. Thanks to their ability to fly through the battlefield at great speeds, they are the masters of outmaneuvering the enemy's firepower. Entire squadrons of tanks are dedicated to taking these demons out of the sky. Drawing this much firepower and being able to survive the onslaught creates opportunity for the rest of the Plague Legion. A smart Death Guard Lord will go out of his way to offer up a rich sacrifice in the hopes of conjuring up as many plague drones as possible. The corrupted sons of Mortarion have learned that these demons serve a very valuable strategic role in their warbands. As most plague companies suffer from slow-moving and static units, the speed and maneuverability of the plague drones often makes the difference between victory and defeat. Intercepting and destroying enemy flanking forces or scouts, launching swift strikes against vulnerable foes, intercepting airborne threats, or rushing to reinforce weaknesses in the Death Guard lines. Plague drones make for versatile and powerful allies. The only fear a Death Guard champion has is that the plague drones that are summoned act according to their battle plans rather than following their own whimsy and slaughtering wherever they please. At the end of the day, these creatures only answer to the Plague Lord Nurgle. They crawl out of the gardens of Nurgle and fulfill their master's wishes. Which brings me to the creation of the rotflies in Nurgle's disease realm. It is a true wonder of decay and growth. Each massive and bloated demon is a beast of Nurgle that has metamorphosed into a disgusting rotfly. We all recognize that the beasts of Nurgle are happy and adventurous demons, eager to spread the love of Grandfather Nurgle. But over thousands of Terran years within the gardens and in real space, even these simple-minded beasts can be soured by their playmates' unwillingness to include them in their infestations. When this happens, a seed of discontent takes hold deep within the mind of a demon, a canker of bitterness and disillusionment that grows with every fresh rejection. Should such a doubting beast be slain and banished back into Nurgle's garden, it will slump into the muck and filth with a resigning sigh and give in to its misery. A thick cloud of Nurgle's fattest flies descends upon the desolate beast, cocooning it against the unfairness of the galaxy, and within the thick pulp, a strange transformation takes hold. A bloated rotfly rips its way free, fully formed and driven by all the hate and cruelty that soured the beast of Nurgle's simple heart. And plague-bearers prize such deeds highly, for in the haste to punish the mortals that once burned them, rotflies speed into battle at a great pace. Now, the process in which a plague-bearer tames such an angry demon is dangerous not only to the rider, but its surrounding area, as the fly thrashes all across Nurgle's realm. This is also why only the most veteran plague bearers have any chance of flying on top of one of these beasts. They first must catch these fast-moving demons. Using the intestines of the victims of Nurgle's garden, the bearer creates a lasso that he will attempt to wrap around the rotfly's massive and bloated form. A smart hunter will make sure that the beast is tied down to one of the many grotesque trees growing in the plague garden, for if not, the fly will launch itself into the smog-covered sky and drag the plague bearer across the toxic and polluted realm. Those that manage to tie down the crazed flying demon will be forced to wait for the rotfly's thrashing to end. Once tired, the plague bearer has the dangerous role of leading the demon across the decaying garden. At any moment, a spike of adrenaline will ooze out of its pus-filled body, and the fly might attack the plague bearer or go off flying. If enough time was given for the demon to fatigue, then it's up to the plague bearer to begin conditioning the demon so that it can be ridden. The whole process could take days, if not weeks, and at any step, the two demons could kill each other. Once tamed, the two demons are bonded, and it's up to the plague bearer to direct the repugnant demon towards a target that the rotfly can take its anger on. So long as the rider can satisfy the fly's rage and anger, the two become plague drones, and eventually begin to infect each other with more of the disturbing gifts of Nurgle. They will be used on countless battlefields, spreading the ilk of their master and butchering their enemies in a fit of rage.
Now let's move on to the lore of the Greenskins and take a look at Old Zogwart.
To make a name for yourself amongst the orcs is a challenge few can tackle. The majority of the notorious orc characters in the 40k universe are either war bosses or warlords, but there are a few odd boys that have survived long enough and caused enough mayhem that greenskins all throughout the galaxy know their name. One of these orc odd boys is Weird Boy Old Zogwart. Arguably one of the most powerful orc psychers is the great and savage Weird Boy Old Zogwart. Zogwart's epic history begins on the famous imperial death world of Catachan, a lush and fertile planet that hides an entire ecosystem that is hostile to all foreign life. Even the greenskins, who have managed to survive in every corner of the galaxy, find it difficult to live long enough to get out of their primitive states on this world. It was in these terrible conditions that Zogwart was born. His fungal cocoon, where his young orcoid spore was maturing, had come to rest inside the nest of a blood viper, one of the most venomous snakes not just on Catachan, but the majority of the Imperium. Zogwart's infant orcoid form had been riddled with snake bites. Nevertheless, he survived the constant poisoning, and during one of the first total solar eclipses of the year, the infant Zogwart emerged from his fungal cocoon, fighting and wrestling the blood vipers that surrounded him. As the blazing tropical Catachan sun beat down upon the gruesome scene of Zogwart's birth, the young orc hauled his envenomed body from the dirt, a dead blood viper serpent in each hand and a tangle of dying snakes withering in his gaping blood-filled mouth. Zogwart was the only orc to march out of that pit of vipers alive. No one in the Greenskin tribe could believe that such a feat could be accomplished by such a young and inexperienced orc. The other feral orcs took this as a sign of his favor in the eyes of the orc gods Gork and Mork. As it was customary in orc culture, the other greenskins of the tribe attempted to force Zogwarts to submit to their rule, but this young and powerful orc quickly showed his tribe he was not to be messed with, breaking a couple of skulls in and dismembering dozens of Gretchen on his way into the camp. From that day forward, no snake of any species would strike at Zogwart, though they slithered through his sleeping furs and curled lovingly into the warmth of his scrawny, scarred green body. Zogwart would prove to be bad-tempered and far more cunning than his fellow orcs, and any that sought to push him around would soon discover that Zogwart's bite could prove to be more toxic than any serpent. He was hailed as the favored son of Mork, and rose to high rank in his tribe before even a Terran year had passed from the day of his violent emergence into the world. The true extent of Zogwart's power only became apparent when he reached adolescence. Violent psychic phenomena soon began to manifest around Zogwart, and many of the older greenskins collected their bets in teeth that the strange orc would mature into a weird boy. He was assigned to a mob of more mature orcs who would be able to keep him on a tight leash, although they had a mysterious habit of accidentally turning into squigs during the night. These greenskin babysitters could not handle the bizarre powers of Zogwarts, the chosen of Mork. When his tribe of feral orcs finally fell upon the human troops of the Catachan's planetary militia, Zogwart proved to be a terror in battle, stomping and whooping as he soaked up the raw psychic wog energy that the tribe generated at war. When Zogwart could bear it no more, his energy would burst forth from his body in a blinding cascade of pure light that blasted the foe, leaving nothing but empty clothes, dropped equipment, and extremely puzzled squigs in their wake. This became Zogwart's calling card. Not all his enemies would fall to his poison or his choppa. They would simply turn into stupid, grimy squigs. Sadly, Zogwart later burned out his eyeballs in a particularly powerful psychic blast that destroyed an entire Imperial Guard company, though to this day he claims that he meant to do it and that Mork guided his path in releasing that much energy. As he reached full maturity and became a dour, belligerent old orc, Zogwart's fame soon surpassed even that of his war boss, Scabguts. He left Catachan behind, taking many of his squigs and snake pets with him on a quest to find even larger groups of orcs whose collective energies could fuel his power to unprecedented heights. Old Zogwart now plies the galaxy as an orc freebooter, going wherever the Wog energy is most pure, basking in the psychic powers of his fellow greenskins and unleashing it at the slightest opportunity. He has proven to be more powerful behind the throne of many orc warlords, and his legend amongst the greenskins grow with every passing battle. After all, what orc would not cheer to hear that their greatest foe transformed into a simple squig?
The next faction I want to take a look at is the Necrons.
The Imperium of Man has waged many wars against the undying legions of the Necrons, and as more and more tomb worlds awaken, their savagery is made ever more apparent. One Necron overlord that showcases how unrelentingly brutal these ancient warriors can be is Kutlak, the World Killer. Kutlak is a Nemesaur of the Maynarch dynasty, earning him the title of Mactlan, or the Extinguisher of Life amongst his people. The brutality of this overlord stretches back to the ancient galactic war known as the War in Heaven, when the Necrons battled the Old Ones and before the Necrons entered their great sleep. Kutlak was regarded as the cruelest and most brutal of all the Nemesaurs in his dynasty. He was a killer who took particular pleasure in the humiliation of enemy champions and generals in personal combat, be they lords of rival dynasties or the warriors and servants of the Old Ones. A warrior first and foremost, Kutlak cared little of the intrigues of the dynasty's royal court, openly disdaining his high office, caring only that he was afforded the respect and glory that his conquests were due. It was so that while the reins of political power were held by others within the Maynarch dynasty, the overall battlefield command of its legion was Kutlak's alone. But in truth, this insularity masked a darker secret, for since the final days of the destruction of the Catan, some terrible force had haunted Kutlak. It has marked and tainted him, turned his triumphs into empty ashes, and threatened the mask of sanity he wore as both a general and a commander. Over time, the cloying, hungering shadow that hung about him darkened, and began to impress itself even on the soulless machine minds of the Necrons around him, making him a pariah even to his own kind. If the ancient legends are to be believed, it was by the hand of this Nemesaur that the Catan known as Landu Gor the Flayer was betrayed to its demise. Although the Maynarch dynasty has long scorned and refuted this claim of betrayal, regardless, some strange, nightmarish taint or even a curse hangs around Kutlak and his kin. Those unfortunate enough to draw close can feel a terrible malignance and a splinter of madness radiating from the Nemesaur's machine body, which claws at their minds and threatens to overwhelm them with insanity. When Kutlak finally awoke from the great sleep, he was both more and less what he had been. His eye lenses now blazed with an unhallowed cold light, a gaze that even other fellow Necron lords could not easily meet. In battle he is a terrifying figure, whose gliding android shell is blackened as if by fire and bedecked with skulls and bones of his victims. Sempiternal weave coats his necrodermis body. This ancient technology threads the exoskeleton with filaments of phased-hardened adamantium, making the Nemesaur's body as strong as Space Marine Terminator armor. The Nemesaur carries his dynasty's Obsidax, a specially crafted midnight black hyperblade that vibrates across dimensional states and can slice through a warrior, much like an Imperial's power weapon. This once proud and glory-hungry general has now become a nightmarish and near-silent monster. The eroded engrams of his mind, driven only by a burning desire to destroy the living and re-establish the rightful supremacy of his dynasty. Once Kutlak was able to fully awaken his warriors, he began his invasion. He led the Maynarch dynasty into the Imperial Orpheus sector on the edge of the Segmentum Tempestus. The attack was preceded by a communication blackout, which left the Orpheus sector cut in two. The Necrons advanced in two distinct lines of battle, one invading the sector from the outer darkness, with the second entering the sector from the galactic south and the territories of the former Lyax sector. Unable to call for help, the entire eastern half of the Orpheus sector succumbed quickly, with only the Space Marines of the Angel's Revenant chapter putting up a true fight. But even their sacrifice was not enough to stop the Xeno advance. 100 solar days after the Necrons' offensive began, the silence was broken, and a tide of astropathic warnings and distress signals reached the Orpheus sector's capital world of Amara Prime. Only now realizing that it had come under attack, the Imperium mobilized its vast armies, but it could not prevent the Drusian subsector from being overrun. To the Imperium's surprise, Kutlak stopped his advance after 100 solar days. As tradition deemed it, their enemies would be given 2 cycles of the ancient Necron tier moon to prepare themselves to meet their death. The Orpheus sector's Imperial governor, Calibor Lan, used this time to turn his world, Amara Prime, into a fortress, stripping other worlds of their defenses and transferring them to Amara. Crusading forces and reinforcements allocated to purge the chaos-ridden Chimerium system were rerouted to Amara, including armies drawn from the Necromundan regiments and the fearsome Death Corps of Krieg of the Imperial Guard. Most importantly, perhaps, the entire Space Marine chapter of the Minotaurs, under the chapter master Asterion Moloch, joined the defenders of Amara. And yet this stronghold of Imperial might was laid low in a single solar day, when the Necrons almost entirely destroyed the powerful battle fleet defending the planet, and landed their troops unopposed on their surface. Had it not been for the desperate counterattack of the Minotaur's chapter fleet, the stoic resistance of the Death Corps, total victory would have been achieved. Yet through great sacrifice and bloody determination, Moloch faced Kutlak on the bridge of his flagship, the Carrion-class tomb ship, Dead Hand. The Minotaur's chapter master and his elite First Company veterans succeeded in wounding the Nemesaur, and Kutlak was able to tear through Moloch's Terminator bodyguards and was able to deal the finishing blow to the Contemptor pattern dreadnought known as the Ancient Geryon when Moloch himself intercepted and engaged him in personal combat. Though equally matched, the combat ended when the tomb ship was hit by a broadside of Imperial firepower, casting Moloch to fall out into the void and leaving the Necron fleet disengaged. Having not anticipated this level of stubbornness amongst their foes, the Necrons retreated with something akin to respect for these vermins which had settled upon their worlds. For the Imperium, however, the loss of the Battle of Amara proved so severe that the sector had to be abandoned and officially dissolved as a Sector Imperialis. The fighting, however, continued as the Undying Legions progressed to the Galactic West, and the Imperium tried to salvage what it could from the remains of the Orpheus sector. Since the devastation in the Orphean War, Kutlak has continued to lead the legions of the Mynarch throughout the entire galaxy. Utilizing the ancient technology of the Dolmen Gates, the Nemesaur has spread destruction and conquest, making sure all intelligent races tremble at the mention of the Nemesaur Kutlak, the Godslayer, and the Cardinal Lord of the Mynarch. And finally, for the Imperium, I want to take a look at a specific navigator. Within the Imperium of Man, there exists a political elite that has tremendous power over the entire human race. They are a class of mutant nobility called Navigators. They have formed into a guild known as the Novice Nobilite. We've covered Navigators in previous 40 Facts video, but to give you a quick synopsis, these influential mutants are the only people that can peer into the warp and help ships ride the tumultuous waves of the Immaterium. Without the Novice Nobilite and their navigators, the Imperium would cease to exist. Even the Imperial Inquisition tends to be careful in handling of individual navigators due to the political power of the Novice Nobilite. The Paternova is the leader and the most powerful both in terms of psychic and political powers of all the navigators of the Novice Nobilite. The Paternova lives in the Palace of the Navigators, which dominates the center of the Navigator Quarter on Terra. From the moment he or she is instilled, the Paternova never leaves this place. The staff, soldiery, and other retainers of the Palace of the Navigators are all drawn from the Paternova's own house, and are all replaced with each new Paternova who assumes the office. And although the Paternova sits atop the Navigator's hierarchy, he or she is not a High Lord of Terra. The position is given over to the Paternoval Envoy, a servant and a trusted advisor to the Patronova. It is the envoy that represents the interests of the Novice Nobilite and the Senatorum Imperialis. To understand the chief role of the Paternova, we must first understand their ability to somehow amplify the warp sense of other navigators. This is a direct result of the extreme mutations a Paternova suffers during their ascension from being one of the heirs apparent found amongst all the Navitors of the most powerful navigator houses. For this reason, the Paternova is sometimes described as the guiding father or mother of the Novice Nobilite, whose powers transcend the warp itself. The importance of this link is demonstrated during the rare interregnum that periodically occurs between the reign of one pattern nova and their replacement. During this time, all navigators, other than the heirs apparent, suffer a considerable reduction in their ability to navigate the warp. If this state of affairs were to continue for long, much of the Imperium would collapse into anarchy, as both commercial and military Imperial starships would be unable to quickly and safely traverse the warp, with many being lost to the Immaterium completely. Luckily, pattern novas can often live for 1,000 standard years. When they do die, however, their successor is chosen from amongst the waiting heirs apparent, the most powerful navigators of all the great families. From the moment of their death, all of the existing heir apparents undergo a dramatic physical metamorphosis. They grow larger and stronger, and the psychic mutations that categorize all navigators become even more pronounced. The heir apparents gain the ability to survive underwater, in poisonous environments, and even in the hard vacuum of space. Their natural aggression is increased, and they are drawn into combat with each other. As each heir apparent is slain, those who survive change physically even more, until only one remains alive. It is this vastly changed and extremely powerful individual who becomes the new pattern nova. As soon as a new pattern nova is instilled within the palace of the navigators, all of the other navigators find the standard strength of their own psychic abilities restored, though not all are all restored to the same degree or effectiveness. Those navigators belonging to the same house of the pattern nova find their abilities greatly enhanced, as if though their blood ties enables the pattern nova to transmit their powers more effectively to their kin. Navigators belonging to the house of the older pattern nova lose this benefit, and many navigators suddenly find their powers greatly diminished. The reason for this alteration in power levels remains unknown to Imperial genetic scientists.
Now those are just some creepy units within the factions of Warhammer 40K. There's obviously more. If you guys enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Don't forget to comment down in the comment section below. Tell me what unit you think is the creepiest, and I'll create a video for you. And thank you guys so much for watching. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.